we had higher expectations and standards for what we achieved this year, and that'll certainly drive us moving forward to meet those expectations and those standards that we have for ourselves. And as many of you probably saw, we made a couple coaching changes today. Do not take that lightly. Those were extremely hard moves for me to make. Those are all men that I have a ton of respect for, been through really high, exciting times with, and do not take those decisions lightly. And appreciate all that those guys brought to the table, because they're like brothers to me. They worked hard every single day, and those were not easy decisions to make. And we'll work to make those hires as soon as possible when that time is appropriate.
Coach, when did you at least start to consider making changes to the staff?
When the season ended.
Okay, thank you.
Zac, and this was just your decision?
Yes.
Why did you feel change was needed?
Just as I evaluate everything within the organization, I just felt like we needed to make a change there. And it's as simple as that. And we'll start that process immediately of evaluating where we need to go and who we want to bring in to help take us to the next level. But again, I can't tell you how much I appreciate what those guys did, and they worked hard every single day, and they're great football coaches, and they'll land on their feet very quickly.
Zac, does that mean you also want to change in philosophy at those positions?
We're going to evaluate the candidates that are available to us, and we'll find the best fit.
Zac, specific to Lou, can you talk through what you feel like's been kind of the reason over the last 2 years you guys have slipped off defensively? And when you make a change like this at the top and then with 2 other position coaches, is it more that you're looking for a different identity on defense? Just can you elaborate a little bit more on the defense?
Just felt like we needed a change. And again, did not take that decision lightly, thought long and hard about it. Lou's been doing this for 6 years here, and the success we've had, I mean, he's been a big reason why we've had a lot of this success. And so again, I don't take this lightly, put a lot of thought into it. It's not an easy day for any of us, and just felt like we need to perform better as a football team. And so again, it's not in any specific one area. I think we got to be better in all 3 phases of our team. And these are the decisions I made today, and we'll work to be better.
How challenging was this year, especially with Jamar playing the way he was, Joe, and obviously Trey? I mean, you have stars that have done things that no other NFL team has done, and yet what we're talking here at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think you look at every game, and there's a play to be made in every single phase that we all regret. You know, whether it's a play call, a play, whatever it is, there's all things that we'll reflect back on, and that are kind of a little bit of a thorn in your side for this season. But all we can do is improve it moving forward and making sure that a season like this doesn't happen again.
Defensively, how concerning is it, or how big of a factor is it that you've had, you know, the Myles Murphys, the Dax Hills? You've invested a lot of draft capital in high-end draft picks and just the development of those guys. How big of a factor is that in this decision?
That's something we'll evaluate the entirety of the offseason, you know, making sure we're better in all areas. And so again, we'll look to bring in people that we feel like can get the most out of everybody.
Coach, there are a lot of joys in this job and a lot of uncomfortable situations in this job. Talk about just the difficulty of this one because of the relationship you have with those coaches.
Really hard. I've been through a lot with all these guys, you know, and they worked their tails off. They're part of really great moments for us. This is the hard side of the profession. And I just appreciate what those guys brought to the table and how they represented this organization, how they represented me as a head coach, how they treated their players. I appreciate all that.
Thank you.
Zac, specific to Frank, you've talked about how you felt like the offensive line has played well this year a number of times. Given how much you guys want to throw the ball, what are some of the prerequisites you're going to be looking for when you start your search for an offensive line coach?
Yeah, we'll form a list and go through it in depth of who we think fits us best, and we'll work out how to find the best guy to get the most out of what we're doing.
Coach, will you be looking for will you be looking for a run game coordinator as well in the offensive line position, or might that be parceled out, or?
We'll just find the best fit for how it fits with our staff.
Zac, you said that these decisions were yours to make. What's that process like? Do you go to ownership in the front office and say you think it's time for a change, or how's that conversation?
Absolutely. You know, we talk, as you all know, we talk on a weekly basis, sometimes more than that. And again, I know the expectation was to hear what I wanted to do after the season, and these are changes I thought we needed to make.
Coach, how much
When you
of
look at the
current roster makeup and
Go ahead, Marshall. Can you start over?
Yep, no problem. How much does the current roster makeup and contracts coming up on both sides of the ball went into the decision with the staff?
I was just trying to do what's best for the team. And so again, it's you balance the personality, you balance the coaching. Everything goes into these decisions, and there's not one thing that drives a decision.
Zach, when you look at the offensive line specifically and kind of the decision to move off of Frank, what was lacking maybe in what you needed from the offensive line, given the way that you guys like to play the ball and the philosophy that you have and how the game should be played?
I just felt like it was time for a change, and so again, we're going to work hard to find the best candidate for that spot.
Zach, what would be your message to the fan base that have questions about your plan for the offseason to ensure a season like this doesn't happen again?
Disappointed, we're all disappointed with the overall totality of the season and the position that we put ourselves in. And I know that it's unacceptable to start the way that we started. We have a lot of talent on this team. We got great coaches. And so again, it's I'm not just going to say what I want to say and that we're going to be better to start the season. We're going to work like hell to make sure that we start the season on the right way, to put ourselves in a great position to finish like we did, because there's a lot of positives there with the way we finished. And it's sickening that we're not in the playoffs with an opportunity to keep this thing going, because we finally found a lot of momentum. And so it's just on us as a whole to finish games off earlier in the season. And it's on me as the head coach to make sure we come out of the offseason, we come out of training camp, and we're ready to hit the ground running from game one.
You could do it over again.
Been a lot of
If you could do it over again, Zach, would you have played Joe more in the preseason leading up to week 1 this year?
I think those will always be decisions we make from year to year, and again, he was coming off the wrist this summer. And so we always had a plan for him. But that's something I don't think because we did 1 year, that's how it's going to be done the next year. Those are certainly conversations we'll continue to have.
Zach, does I feel like you need reasons for the slow start?
Paul, go ahead, Paul, and then I'll come to you, Richard.
Yeah.
Zach, do you feel like you need to consider changes to the off-season program? Is that something that you guys have considered of being something that can be a little different, or training camp, or is there some way where that can be connected to the early season struggles?
Those are certainly things that I have to evaluate, and that's something I really do more so over the next 2 months, and not necessarily today as the season ends. Today is about reflecting on changes we've got to make immediately. But then you spend time over the next 2 months as we're going through personnel, really evaluating, okay, what do I want to do over the course of April, May, June, and into training camp. And so there will be a lot of time to evaluate all that. Go ahead, Richard.
I'll ask the question, so you're good. Thanks, Zach.
Okay.
What level of urgency are you hoping that you and the front office and ownership attack the offseason with in hopes to get back to being contending for a Super Bowl next year?
What level of urgency?
Mm-hmm.
Urgent.
Coach, if the Chiefs were to have won yesterday, or one different thing were to have gone differently, and you guys were to be in the playoffs, how different would these decisions have been?
As soon as the season ended officially, that's when I needed to solidify what I wanted to do. So it's hard to talk about a hypothetical where we're at right now. And so those decisions were made.
Zach, conversations like with Joe in terms of how he felt like the season went. I mean, what's that debrief like when y'all kind of wrap up the season and he's kind of feeling?
I haven't talked to Joe yet. As you guys know, there's weather issues. That's why we're on Zoom right now. So there's a couple players that were able to make it in that I've talked to. It's not a rushed process. It's not something that needs to be done this morning. It can be done over the course of this week. Joe's usually around the entire offseason, so I will absolutely talk to Joe, but just because of weather, we didn't get an opportunity to do that. I called him this morning just briefly to update on a couple things, but he and I will go through the season in depth at a later date.
And kind of to follow up on that, when you look at how much he's kind of been vocal about how, his role in what the franchise might look like and how he wants it as we build, how do you kind of take that into consideration? How does that get folded into the decision-making process? I know that's always been, valued as he's been here, but as he becomes more vocal, maybe how does that play into the process on how this thing shapes moving forward?
He and I have always been very open with one another, in private, in our conversations. He's well aware that our front office is aware that ownership, Duke, everybody's always available too. And so that'll be start of the process as we go through this offseason program.
Zach, there's always accountability with the coaches. That's what kind of today is about. What about accountability with the players who will remain, who will be with the club next year? What is your message to them as they head to the offseason?
Well, you talk with as many as you can, the expectations for what's to come next, what we need to do a better job of, things that we did well, so again, it's a very comprehensive conversation as you go through a lot of these guys, and those will continue. They're not all done, and they'll continue throughout the week.
How do you feel, follow up, how do you feel about the leadership in the locker room, both when you guys started 4-8 and when you guys won 5 in a row? I think it speaks wholeheartedly to how we finished with 5 wins in a row, and to go on the road and win a divisional game in the final game and keep our hopes alive. I think it speaks a lot to the leadership. I think it speaks a lot to the growth of a lot of the young players that we had over the course of the season that allowed us to do that. I think it speaks to the coaching staff and the messaging to the players as the season progresses, and to keep those guys in it and to be able to get the most out of them. So there are positives to draw from, but I don't want that to lead anyone to believe that we think it was good enough this year on what we just did.
Zach, how important is it for this offense? And you guys were so productive on offense this year, but to almost level up the run game. We saw it at the end of the season, but just be more consistent or be able to rely on it. How big of a factor is that? I
think the way that some of these games played out, it doesn't always allow you to do the things that you want to do. I will say, from about the halfway point of the season, every game was do or die for us, where we felt like we needed to win. And so you lean towards putting the ball in Joe's hands when you're in those situations. And there's certainly a play style, I think, that's puts the lineman in a better position, puts Joe in a better position than to just draw back and throw it every single play like we tended to do. And so what we got to do a better job of controlling games from the jump, getting up 13-3, getting up 17-3. And that allows you to expand your run game and lean on the run game. And so that's going to take a lot of work, and it's got to take everybody involved, but we need to do a better job of controlling games in the first half that allows us to dictate what the tempo of the game is going to be.
From a scheme standpoint, from the passing game and the run game, do you think there was a good marriage there, or is that something you're hoping to strengthen with this move?
I think that we're always willing to evolve everything. The level of our passing game, the level of our run game. I'm proud of the way that we put the ball in the end zone. And so oftentimes I don't care what it looks like. I don't care how we get there as long as we get in. But with that being said, I think we'll continue to improve in both areas.
Coach, when you look at the character of this team, one thing that won't be questioned is that character coming down the stretch with their backs against the wall. What gave you the most joy about how they responded to the adversity in the manner that they did?
You just know what they're about. You see them every single day. I see them on the practice field. I think that's the biggest thing for me, was just the tone of how we practice. Those guys were willing to do whatever it took, whether we were going to go full speed, whether we were going to go jog through. I never heard the complaints. Hey, we're going to be outside in 20-degree weather today. Guys embrace that. And so when you see that attitude amongst the guys as you're hitting December and your record is not what you expected it to be, that tells me a lot about the character that we had in the locker room.
Thank you.
And then will you lobby the front office to get T re-signed and get Jamar extended sooner rather than later, so that doesn't maybe become a distraction?
I think lobby is not the right word. We are lockstep in how we communicate every week of the season, every week of the offseason. And so those are conversations we'll have. We got a lot of great players, and T is one of them, certainly. And I'm very hopeful that that'll work out to where we're able to get him back. But there's certainly a process we're going to have to undergo with a lot of players on our team. And I can promise you, we'll be in unison with whatever those decisions are. And that's a process we'll start now, through the month of January and February, and talking through every player on our roster and how it all fits.
Coach, you've had some success with this defense. You've drafted for it. Do you want to keep remnants of it, some of it, or does the new coordinator going to come in and rip it up, or how do you envision a marriage of what you've gone with, of new and old, or?
Yeah, that's the process you go through now, and it's not, I know everybody wants answers on exactly what it's going to look like, and I can't provide that today. I certainly have a vision for what I want it to look like, and we'll go through the process of finding the right candidates and evaluating them, and then finding the right fit. And then from there, how do these players fit with what we're doing? And that'll be in conjunction with Duke and his staff. And so again, there's a long process you'll go through, and just fresh off the season, we'll close this chapter and be ready to move on to the next one.
Zach, how appealing do you think that these jobs are, specifically the defensive coordinator job and the offensive line coach job, to the rest of the NFL?
I think it's got to be as appealing as it could possibly be. You know, we've got some of the best players in the world, and it's a great organization to work for. It's a tremendous city to work in. It's the best fan base in all the world. And so I could keep listing the positives, but those are some of the main ones.
How do you feel like your own performance was this year? How did you assess the job that you did? And are there things you came out of this with notes on improvement and how you want to maybe change some things going forward, specifically just to yourself?
Yeah, I'll certainly look back over those games that we lost, and some of the moments where I need to do a better job of taking control of a game, you know, and making sure our team took control of the game. And in those late moments where you lost games, that you were a player 2 away, what are the things I got to do better? And so again, those aren't things that you can run from when you're in my shoes, the things you got to address head on. And I've never had an issue doing that. And so those are things I got to look at.
Zach, as you go through the search, coming up with the defensive coordinator job, being an offensive minded head coach, how important when in this search is having someone who has NFL defensive coordinator experience in your search, as opposed to giving someone their first shot?
Yeah, I'm not gonna write anybody off because their experience level. I think that you got to evaluate everybody that's out there. Certainly, we have a team that I think is ready to win and do great things, and so experience is a good thing. But I'm not going to say that rules anybody out.
Zach,
For
you
young-
had 2 key position coaches in Chuck Burks and Jordan Kovacs. Are they 2 coaches that you plan to keep on staff, or is that going to be up to the defensive coordinator?
We'll go through that process, you know, as we get a new coordinator.
Before you look at it, how are you with the young play?
Who's talking over Mike, and then I'll hit Mike next. Somebody was saying, how are you looking at players?
Charlie.
Yeah, sorry, Zach. How do you look at young players, Zach, who come in? You have Joe, you have Jamar. There's an expectation, I'm sure, when you get a call from the Bengals on draft night that, okay, we're going to be able to contend. We're going to be able to win right away. Will you look at anything with onboarding young guys and knowing now the lessons of this season, especially for those young guys?
Yeah, I think integrating the guys into our culture and understanding the character of our team as quickly as possible will certainly be something that we emphasize over the course of the offseason. And I'm always looking at ways to improve that. I think that that's something that we can improve this year, is making sure those first year players hit the ground running and understand who the guys are that are key points in our locker room, what they've achieved, what it takes to achieve what they've achieved. And so as much as they can hear from those guys, I'll make sure that they do it. Go ahead, Mike.
Zach, on the injury front, are you aware of any players who might need procedures going into the off season? At this point, do you have any update on players offensively, defensively?
Yeah, no update. I think those are things that we're working through today. And again, weather permitting, that's shifted some guys tomorrow as well.
Zach, when you talk about guys who might potentially be in that coordinator spot, what are some traits that you've valued over the years and coordinators that you've liked, guys that you've coached with, traits that you feel like make for a good defensive coordinator, especially for the style of ball that you like to play?
They get the most out of the players, certainly. And I think you got to understand our division that we play in. You're going to play 6 a year. That's going to dictate really where you end up at the end of the season. And so I think that is this division's different. It's I think when people come and they play all 4 teams in this division, they feel that immediately. And so you certainly need a coordinator that has an understanding of that, which there's plenty of the guys in the league that have been around the block that have done that, and I'll go through the process of finding the right one.
Zach, what will that process be like? I'm sure you already have a list, or you're putting together a list. Will you hope to contact some candidates this week? Do you talk with ownership about it? What will that be like?
Talk with ownership about it. You know, that's the starting point, and then we'll start to reach out how it's appropriate and what the guidelines tell us to do.
Zach, is the expectation, I know you talked about T earlier, but is the expectation for the organization that you guys will be able to get a long-term deal done for Jamar Chase this offseason?
That's certainly our hope.
Dan is asking potentially beefing up on the inside of the defensive line. Is that can be a priority here?
I think those are the things, we'll start addressing immediately. And again, we'll just get through this day today. Then we move into the personnel aspect of things and what it looks like. And again, a lot of that is let's hire a football coach over there. And so that way we can do it the right way, where we're evaluating the personnel with Duke and his staff and find the right fits for how we want to move forward.
What did you take away from your initial talk following the season with Mike Brown, Zach?
The understanding that we need to be better, in his own way, of doing it. And again, this isn't something, there's not this end of the season, big wrap up. This is a weekly conversation that he and I have. And so that's the best way to do it, because there's no, every 2 months you're getting together and talking. It's a daily basis thing. And so that allows you to have the best communication possible, make sound decisions where everybody has all the information. And so he's understanding of the moves I felt like we needed to make. And I certainly understand where we need to be moving forward.
Zach, as the head coach, when you make moves like you made, do you think it comes with more pressure moving forward?
I mean, when I tell you, I feel an urgency to win every single day. I'm not lying to you. So pressure is not the word. You can't do this job if you're going to succumb to pressure. And I just make the decisions I feel like I need to make, not because of any pressure I feel. These are decisions I feel like I got to make because I'm the head coach of this football team and the expectations that we have. And so there's always a level of urgency to improve everything I'm doing and everything this team is doing. Pressure is not the word I would use. Go ahead, Berg.
Yeah, you have the urgency. Your coaching staff has the urgency, Zach. But in talking with Mike and Katie and Troy, are you confident that there's an urgency from ownership as well?
I think we are all on the same page that we want to win.